My name is Richard Dyson Howell Jr. I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1952. I am the first of 4 children. We are the children of Richard Dyson Howell Sr. and Josephine Dewey Howell, my father and my mother. Both my parents were born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but their parents, of course, came from other parts of the country. On my father's side, my father's father, my grandfather, came from Louisiana. My father's mother came from the great state of Kansas and Missouri. From my mother's side, my mother's mother came from Mississippi. She was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And my mother's father came from Indiana. It was quite an interesting union for all that old generation to come to Minneapolis to get a better life. But both my parents were also born in Minneapolis, and of course my mother and my father met each other while my father was a military man. He was an Army man. He was an Army sergeant. He served in World War II. He did not finish his high school education until he came back from World War II and graduated out of senior high. And that was when he also met my mother, who was just about a week out of high school, her senior year, and they were married in June of 1951. I, of course, was born in 1952. I was the first of 4, as I said before, and I was known as Dickie. That was my pet name, Dickie. So if anybody calls me Dickie, you know that you must know something about my family background. My father was known as Richard. I was known as Dickie. And of course, I have 3 other siblings. My brother Keith, who was born less than a year after I was born. And of course, my sister and my brother, Eric, who was the baby. Unfortunately, my brother, who was born right after me, has passed away, so there's only 3 of us left. But all of us were born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was born at a hospital called Maternity Hospital. And don't tell anybody, but that hospital no longer exists. My other 3 siblings were born at a hospital called Mount Sinai Hospital, located on 22nd and 24th in Chicago. And it's no longer a hospital. It's used as another service there. But we grew up in Minneapolis. I grew up in South Minneapolis. My father worked for the post office. My mother was a full-time domestic person until she went out and got a job at Honeywell. And both my father and mother, however, believed in hard work. And they also believed in providing an education. And so my father moved from 39th and 2nd Avenue South to 44th and 5th Avenue South. And I was proud to attend a school called Field School. And many of you may know what that school is. It was really one of the great educational centers of the Minneapolis Public School systems. And many great names came from Field School, by the way. And of course, I'm not mentioning anybody's name, of course, but there were some great people that graduated or left Field School. I did not finish Field School. I went as far as 3rd grade. My father decided to go to the University of Minnesota. He is one of 6 siblings of his family, and my father decided to be the first one to graduate and get a college education. And so while we were still young, I was just getting into 4th grade, my father decided to move from South Minneapolis and move to Southeast Minneapolis from South Minneapolis, so my father could attend the University of Minnesota to become an elementary school teacher. What an exciting experience that was to look at the housing in Southeast Minneapolis. Some of you may remember Gomer Pyle. Gomer Pyle was an old TV show back in the 1960s. And we lived in Quonset huts, exactly, Quonset huts on Como Avenue, which was student housing. It was low income, of course, for students, but I do remember that my bedroom was in the living room, for instance, and both my brother and my little sister had to share a room together. My mother, of course, and my father had their own bedroom, but it was a very small place. But it was such a village. We used to call it University Village because there were students from all over the world that lived in that housing community. And that was really my first taste of really understanding diversity and multicultural relationships, as we had people from India, people from different parts of the country, parts of the world, students that were attending the University of Minnesota. And these students and us became great friends, and we played together. Some of the games we played was very simple, very cheap, hide and go seek, pump, roll away, Red Rover, send somebody right over, tag. And so we had some great times. It didn't cost anything. It was cheap play, but we enjoyed the immensely opportunities just to have a fellowship in that community. Then my father decided to move on. He decided that he wanted to continue his studies at St. Cloud University. At that time, it was called St. Cloud State College. It was also a teacher's college. So because he had to move from the University of Minnesota, my dad also had to move from university housing. And so we moved in a place called Northeast Minneapolis, Lowry and Pierce Street in Northeast Minneapolis. And of course, Northeast Minneapolis is divides of presidents of the United States. So Pierce was one of the presidents of the United States. In fact, he was the 14th president of the United States. We lived on Pierce Street. And also, while we were living there for about the next 4 years of my life, my understanding was that I went to a school called Northeast Junior High School. And that was a school that was all white. And I remember, I can't forget it, my father enrolled me in that school. And Mr. Mickelson was the name of our counselor, told my father, he said, Mr. Howell, talking to my father, I need to tell you something. And then he came up with the news, your son is going to be the first black to integrate this school and the only black. My dad thought that was such a great piece of information. But remember, I'm the one that had to go to school, not my dad. I can't tell you the experiences that I had. I don't think time would permit me to just share with you the intimidation and the fear that I had when I first integrated that school. Walking down the school hallway, people never seen a black boy before. They wanted to touch my hair. They wanted to know anything and everything about what the black people do. And of course, for those who did not understand African American culture, there was a lot of ignorance at play. Many of them called me names. Many of them alienated themselves from me. Not because of it necessarily they were bigots or discriminatory, but because they didn't understand what a black person was. Ignorance was really great at work. But I had to learn how to endure that. One of the greatest things that happened to me was in that summer before I entered 7th grade at Northeast Junior High School. I gave my life over to Jesus Christ. I was only 11 years old, about to become 12. And I have to say that the Lord blessed me to have a relationship in Him. Can you imagine that? Just in time to integrate this school. So I didn't learn how to fight. I learned how to have peace. I did not learn how to make trouble. I learned how to make peace. I was not a person that was looking for trouble. I was a person looking for peace. So this was during the 60s. Now keep in mind, the civil rights movement was going on in the 1960s. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was leading so many marches in the South. So you have to understand that it was a time of nonviolence, it was a time of peace, but also in the wake of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, the Black Power movement also developed. And of course, many of you may remember Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, and their rhetoric was a little more militant in raising the understanding of black pride. And you have to understand that when I was attending Northeast Junior High School, I didn't understand black pride because being the only black, you felt more engaged to becoming more white. So I didn't have a real identity. So I wanted to be more white than I wanted to be more black because I did not understand the black culture when you're thrown into the cesspool of white culture. It was a hard time for me. Let me tell you a story. You like this. In the 1960s, Ringo, John, George, and Paul. Who are they? The Beatles. Remember the Beatles? And they were the British invasion. Their music hit America around the time I was in 6th grade, but they were still very popular in 7th and 8th grade of my Northeast time. And I wanted to be like the Beatles, so I tried to comb my hair like a mop, like they had their hair. And of course, when I brought my hair down to around my middle of my forehead, it didn't stay there. My hair bounced back up. Hello, welcome. You're not white. You're black, right? So it was very difficult for me to make a transition from being white to black. And then I did not understand the real black culture. Remember, I just gave my heart to the Lord. So I'm learning about peace and trying to live safe before the Lord. And so there was a lot of dynamics that were going on mentally that I had to really work out through experience in life. And so I realized when I was called the N-word, when I was called the coon, there are many things I can tell you right now. It really had to make me identify, I am not white. I am truly black. I'm not Polish. And in those days, in 1960, the Northeast District was comprised of Scandinavians, okay? And one of the Scandinavian names that they used were called Polacks. And so a lot of people told a lot of Polak jokes. I had no idea what a Polak was, okay? Had no idea. So one day I used the word Polak, not knowing what it meant. And someone turned around and said, how would you like for someone to call you the N-word? And they didn't use the N-word, they actually gave me the N-word, right? How would you like for someone to call you N? Hello, wake up America. Wow, the baptism reality. I am a black boy. I'm black, I'm not white. But God made me. God made my melatonin the color that I have. But I had to learn how to love who I was. I love Jesus. I love my fellow man. But how do you love someone who's trying to be different from other people? Reality hit after I graduated out of high school. Out of junior high school. I was in 9th grade and they voted me to become the student council president. I was the first black ever to have that position at Northeast Junior High School. It was kind of like a thank God moment, okay? Just to appreciate where the Lord had brought me from. I was on the honor roll and I was still maturing, okay? Still maturing, but still trying to identify who I was. So in 10th grade, I decided to go to a different school. And in Marshall High School, which is no longer existing, Marshall High, that's when it all began. I was living in Northeast. My family and I were living in Northeast for about 3 years. I covered 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade without incident, all right? It was also during those same days I was going to church, fasting and praying, going to all-night prayer meetings, just really grooving with God. So I was really developing a more Christian style, Christian-based lifestyle. At the same time, I had to recognize the social crises that was at hand. It was in 10th grade. I got a call one day. The call said, nigger, get out of town, move. And unfortunately, I did not know how to handle that call. My father, thankfully, was sitting right there. He told me to hang the phone up. In fact, they called me Black Boy, to be honest with you. And so, that night, someone threw a Molotov cocktail at our house. My friends, that was a reality check. There's bigotry, there's hatred, discriminatory. Though thankfully, no one got hurt. But it was a wake-up call. I better start understanding who I am and why God made me who I was and be the best me that I could ever be and the best person that God wanted me to be. That was a baptism wake-up call. It was in that same time, and of course the report hit the newspapers. At that time it was called the Minneapolis Tribune. My brother, my sister, and I were on the front page of the Minneapolis Tribune as the reporter reported that story of the Molotov cocktail. One of the community members saw that, came to our house and asked my mother if she wouldn't mind if I could go to a school in South Dakota called Augustana Academy in Canton, South Dakota. My father was getting ready to finish his education at St. Cloud. He didn't really want me to go to Canton, South Dakota. My mother thought it would be a good chance for me to get out the house, get away from the home church that I was worshiping in, and learn who I was. I have to tell you, it was the greatest experience that God has given me on this side of heaven. One of the greatest experiences. When I went to Augustana Academy in Canton, South Dakota, it was a very small-knit community, but it was a school, an academy run by the old American Lutheran Church that blew up and invited inner-city children from New York, Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis to be a part of the student population. Hello, I saw more black people. I saw white people. I saw people from the foreign fields. I saw Asians. I said, wow, this is becoming a melting pot. And that was when I realized I am a black man. I am black who happens to love God I'm a black man who happens to love people. I am a black man who can thank God for being black. It was my baptism of understanding who my identity was. Augustine Academy helped me to bring that to a understanding. It was then I was also called into ministry. I wanted to be a minister, but I found out that I had a gift of talking to people. People had questions about life. They wanted to come share at Augustine Academy. So I decided then that I believe I was called into the ministry of Jesus Christ. And to this day, I went to North Central Bible College. I finished my education. I went to University of St. Thomas, got my master's degree in counseling psychology. So I got married in 1973 to a beautiful lady from Arkansas, and that's a long story how we met, but to make it short, we met at a church. She happened to come to this area because her sister had already moved up here to Minneapolis, St. Paul from Arkansas. So every summer she would come to Minnesota to be with her sisters. But that particular summer, she just happened, we were both in the same church, worshiping in another location. And I sang a song, and she was sitting in the back of the church. I was standing in the front of the church, and back in those days we had testimony service. And she asked someone, "Who is that?" And of course, the rest is history. Did I win her with my golden voice? Absolutely not. I am not a singer. They never asked to be on American Idol. But it was something about that relationship that she wanted to know who I was. And of course, I was interested in knowing who she was. And when you know we were married almost 2 years later. I was 21, she was 20 when we married. But we've now been married 50 years. We have 2 wonderful children. And with our 2 wonderful children, my son and my daughter both have their master's degree. My daughter also has her PhD in counseling and in therapy. And so they both are very successful, and with our 2 children, they've given us 7 grandchildren, and both my children are married. Both are very happy in their relationship with their spouses, so we're very happy about that. As far as my contribution is learning, is that I am colorblind. I am not a bigot. I do not believe in discrimination. To share with you my story, what happened in Northeast Junior High School, let me show you something else. Was that when I was at Marshall High, when we had the Malta cocktail, once the article hit the front page of the newspaper, so many people sent letters to my mother and my father apologizing and asking us not to move from the community. Guess who did most of the writing? You're right, white people. And that's when I found out that not everyone who had blue eyes was devil. And so it gave me a love for people. I understand people. I love people. And being called in the ministry of Jesus Christ, it makes us colorblind. It makes us gender blind. It makes us class blind. I love everyone. And everyone has an opportunity to come to Jesus Christ, regardless who they are, regardless what journey they are on. That is my call. That is what I believe my place is in Minnesota. That is my calling in this place. I now pastor a church. My pastor passed away in 1984. I'm the 3rd pastor of Shiloh Temple. It was called Shiloh Temple Church then. And then in the early 1990s, we named the church from Shiloh Temple Church to Shiloh Temple International Ministries. My parents, my grandparents, that is, both my grandfather and my grandmother from my mother's side, her mother and her father, were founders of the church in 1931. And we're now in our 90th year. 90 years later, we are still at Shiloh Temple International Ministries. We're located at 1201 West Broadway, right here on the north side of Minneapolis. I've been pastoring now for over 40 years. My grandmother made me co-pastor in 1980, the year that I graduated out of North Central Bible College. And so counting 1980 up until the time of her passing in 1984 to the current time of 2024, it's been over 40 years that I've been pastoring. I also am a bishop now, and I belong to an organization called the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, which began in the early 1900s. And I am now the 7th Episcopal Diocesan of this community, which concludes Minnesota, Wisconsin, South and North Dakota. And I'm very proud to have all these many churches for fellowshipping, pastors, their congregants, who are so blessed to have their fellowship with us in the 7th Episcopal District of the Pentecostal Assembly of the World, better known as the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Dakotas District Council. Last year, 2023, in St. Louis, Missouri, we had an open position. Our second assistant presiding bishop passed away suddenly last year in 2023, and we decided to replace him at this convention in St. Louis, Missouri last year in 2023 again. And I was nominated and elected to serve as the second assistant presiding bishop of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, in which I'm humbled to have that position as well. So, a father, a grandfather, a son. My mother's living. My father passed away about 6 years ago. My mother now is still living, and we love her to life. My brother, my sister. My sister has a church. My brother's a member of her church. Her church is located in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, Shiloh Temple Church. And also the fact that we are still here in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm proud to be a citizen right here in Minnesota. I've done some community work. We have a food shelf. We have a clothes shelf. We've done some work on the streets. And I tell you, I had no idea that Minnesota would be the epicenter for many after the murder of George Floyd. And we are here to serve this community, not just us, but so many wonderful houses of worship. And their leaders are also engaged in doing greater community work for our community, because we love our community, we love our city, we love Minnesota, and it's the right thing to do. So it's really a blessing. That's a snap view of who I am, but I hope that you will certainly know that we love you very, very much. I love you. I am still feeling good. My health is good. I want to continue to do the great work that the Lord has laid upon our hearts to do. We've met so many people in this walk of life and ministry. You can imagine, from the old to the young to the middle age, from the black to the white to the Asian to the Hispanic. I mean, for the native, it has been an amazing journey to minister to so many people over these last 40 years, and we intend to continue by the grace of God.